And there we are, which is cool. Hey, Facebook Live, we are going to jump right into recording with Rob Brown of Business Development Academy. If you are an accountant and you need to work on your marketing and your sales, you got to check out this guy's podcast. And he is joining us. I love that you're in accounting. I love your name is Rob, and I love that you're joining us from the UK, the home of Robin Hood. So, accounting, taken from the rich and given to the poor, all the money, not that you do that, but that's what you brought up to me. And from what I understand, Sherwood Forest isn't that much of a forest.
You're right.
That's what I've heard. Yeah, it's a few trees. So if you have a comment or a question for Rob, just put it in, and we will acknowledge that briefly after the recording time. I read your bio. I'm pronouncing your name correctly. Our levels are relatively decent, Rob. I think we're ready to go. Are you ready to go?
I'm ready to go, but don't do that because that's offensive here in the UK.
What did I just do?
You did this and then you did this.
Oh, what does that mean?
Well, it comes from back in the old days when we caught the French at war. We would cut off these two fingers so they couldn't use a bow and arrow. And so we used to do that to the French.
And I just did that to you on Facebook Live. Folks, why do you think I do this podcast? I get to learn all kinds of stuff not to do when you're blasting this. And so for any people en français in France, I'm not going to cut off your fingers. I apologize, and let's get on with the.
Well, this in the UK is this in the US.
Well, that's, okay. All of the Britons. Trying not. Yeah, I'm digging deeper and deeper.
You're going global, my friend.
All right. Let this be Talk Universe. My loss, your gain. All right, Rob, you ready to go?
I'm all set, my friend.
All right. So, and it's the personal brand of you. bdacademy.pro is the website right there, and it's the personal brand of you. Rob, which TEDx was that?
It was in Nottingham.
Nottingham, okay.
Yeah, University of Nottingham.
All right, am I saying that right, Nottingham instead of Nottingham, or am I?
You're saying it pretty good, actually. Nottingham is what the Americans say, but Nottingham, we don't pronounce the H.
Yeah, I'm trying to do it British style.
Yeah,
okay.
You've got a lot to make up the way you started.
Well, yeah, I've dug out about an inch. Right, Rob? I'm about an inch closer to like the little Batman. It's like Batman when he was trying to come out of that cave at the beginning, that well they threw him in. That's how I feel. All right, everybody. Okay, we're gonna rock this thing in 3, 2. We are live with Rob Brown. Rob,
we are.
Are you ready to talk?
I've been ready for a while, Nathan. So excited.
Rob Brown is the CEO and founder of the Business Development Academy, which helps large accounting firms massively increase their revenues, sales, and work-winning capability. Best-selling author of the book Build Your Reputation, Rob also hosts the Top 100 Club accounting podcast. So from one podcaster to another, welcome Rob Brown to the talk.
That's a very warm welcome. Thank you, Nathan.
Your TEDx Nottingham talk was called The Personal Brand of You, just like the book. I think we have a few things in common. I love that you also have spent an awful lot of time networking, and I love that you took track of it as an accountant. You have a dollar figure or a pound figure, and it was an awful lot of money, a lot of man hours, and not a whole lot of sales from that. So please take us behind the talk.
Whoa, yeah. Well, you know how it's a bit like preaching. If you understand where a talk came from, preachers have a message that God puts on their heart, and I wanted to get this message out. So when I was offered an opportunity to do a TED Talk, I thought this is a perfect time to get this very sad story of how I got out of teaching, got into selling insurance, and was lousy at it for a couple of years. And truth be known, I'm not an accountant. I just help accountants. So I had this story, but I was always fascinated when I moved into the world of self-employed from a very safe teaching job where I'm earning this set amount of money every month, come rain or shine, to this job where I'm I'm direct sales, commission only. If I don't sell, I don't eat. So how do you stand out in that world? How do you make a difference? How do you get people to choose you instead of other people? And I was always fascinated by why some people get the business and others don't, even if they're not as good as someone else. And that's how the talk came about.
How do some people get the business and others don't? Because you were going around, you had like 200 or 300 hours logged. You were pressing the flesh. You collected like 947 business cards, and then you had a big goose egg at the end in terms of actual business generated. And my results, maybe not as much on the effort side, but very similarly, in many cases, on the revenue side. So what is different about the people that actually get the results where it counts, Rob?
Well, in our game, Nathan, you think that being busy is being productive. But I was going to all of these networking events thinking that was the answer. But I was breaking so many rules and making so many mistakes. For instance, you'd get a handful of business cards at a networking mixer. You bring them back to your office, you put them on the desk, and you turn the other way and say, right, where was I? Now, you can see that mistake I'm making right there, but I couldn't see it at the time. So I was lousy. I wasn't cataloging all the conversations I was having at the time. It was only afterwards when my wife said to me, okay, you've done all this networking, but how much business have you done? Whoa, that's that hit between the eyes. So I thought that, there's lessons here. Can I turn this around? And that quote that she said, I said, I don't know why I've not done it. I've had 987 conversations. And she said, Rob, that's your problem. You count your conversations, but you don't make your conversations count. Boom.
Say that again. You count your conversations, but you're not making your conversations count.
That's the one.
Wow.
That's gold right there, isn't it? And how annoying that the wife's right again.
Well, that's part of why they're there. if we'll listen to them, and a lot of times we kind of don't. So I mean, you had some really bad habits. I have had the same bad habits and still have the same bad habits, although I'm doing a little bit more podcasting than networking these days. And it's kind of funny how the results get better when you're actually creating and producing and inviting people in as a fellow podcaster into something of value where it can be, archived and spread and everything else. But not everybody can, start a podcast quickly or whatnot. What are some things we can do to just break that habit and start making the conversations count, Rob?
Well, first you got to be strategic. So I kept showing up at the wrong events, talking to all the wrong people. No matter how good your conversations are, if you're not talking to the right people at the right time. So that's a biggie. And there are so many different ways to network now. For instance, I've identified 7 different ways, and you've got to pick one that plays to your strengths and your style. And once you get that, you're in the game. Then I'm a big believer in, and you ask this of your TED Talks, do you rehearse it or do you wing it? And a good thing is to have some scripts ready, some questions, and here's another soundbite for you. The worst time to think of the best thing to say is when you're saying it. You're nodding because you know that. Have you learned that by experience?
Well, I just know the feeling. Come on, Talk Universe. You've been there too. You're mingling around and you're trying to ask an intelligent question. A lot of times it doesn't happen. A lot of times you have a least intelligent question, and I found that that is proportional to the degree of importance of the person that you are surprised to be talking to. So, little TMI here. So you have 7 ways to network. Obviously you have these great resources behind all that. But what was the turning point for you, Rob? When did you decide that, I've cataloged all of this stuff. Obviously it doesn't make any sense, but not only do I have to change, I want to change, and I want to help other people change so that they can put their networking or their value adding to work for them.
It was one of those seminal moments, Nathan, where you get to that point where there's no going back. So it was a moment of intense shame, humiliation, when I had to admit to my wife that I'd gone out and done all of this networking and not done much with it, not got much from it. So you're embarrassed at that point, and you're embarrassed into going back to teaching on what you were doing before. I thought, I've really got to make this work. You know the idea of the Vikings, when they conquered somewhere, when they landed somewhere in the boats, the first thing that they did? They would burn their boats. So there's no going back. They conquered the land, got the trees, got the resources, built new boats and went further on, or they died trying. So I thought I either go back to teaching and that's it, or I burn it and I really go for this. So I started to be a lot more intentional with my relationship building. And I often say your richest resources are in your richest relationships. So I really started to embrace that, ask better questions, take more of an interest. And before you know it, things start to happen in a much better way.
We've been enjoying this conversation with Rob Brown, coming to us from TEDx Nottingham over in the UK. His talk is called The Personal Brand of You. And in just a moment, we're going to pivot over to You Talk Universe because it is time for the Blitz Round.
Ooh.
And we're back with Rob Brown. It is time for the Blitz Round. This is where I'm going to ask Rob a series of either-or questions related to the prep and performance of his recent talk. Rob, are you ready?
Oh, yes, so ready.
All right. Question number one. Were you selected to speak or did you apply?
I was invited to speak.
Are you a memorizer, an improviser, or a blender?
I have a good memory, but once I get the structure of the talk in, I then go in and improvise. So I guess I'm a blender.
Okay. How did that serve you, Rob?
I've always been pretty good at hitting the time, but I just had a rough idea of what I wanted to say. And then that way it's a bit more spontaneous for me. You're not doing it word for word. And I knew I could hit the mark. So, yeah, I had a little bit of natural about it, I think is what I'm trying to say. It made it a bit more authentic.
Now, did you have nerves or were you in the zone or neither or both?
Yeah, that's a good one. I get nervous 5 seconds before I go on stage. And within 5 seconds, once I'm on, it's gone. So that's great.
How does that work for you? Is it because of the preparation or is that something that you've just found? What?
Well, there's a lot at stake when you hit a talk. You've got to nail it. You've got an audience to impress. You've got a message to get across. So there's pressure on that. And I don't care how good you are. You can't afford to get complacent. So I embrace that pressure. But as you talk a lot about in your podcast, you then get into that zone, and that's what allows you to perform and do what you know you can do and get the result you want.
Rob, what's a tip, a technique, or a tool that helped you?
I like the slides, but I don't have very much on my slides at all. Sometimes it's an image, sometimes it's one word. And when I look back on my talk and other TED Talks, mine's quite slide heavy. And going back, I may have changed that. I've not seen a lot of TED Talks before I was invited to speak. So I'd go with less slides, but they're still pretty powerful. If you could put an image with some words, that would be a good tip for people.
Now, this isn't my normal talk question, but I mean, you've got a lot of views on your talk. I mean,
is that a lot? I mean, you talk to people like this all the time. So what, we got 110,000? Is that a lot for a TEDx talk?
I think just about the vast majority of guests would love to be in that spot where you've got six-figure views, for sure. Now, I mean, I've had people that have had millions of views, but I mean it all starts with in the same place. The numbers go in the same order. So what was it about?
I've got to tell you that I was your 500th viewer on your talk today. So that's all going on, man.
Well, and that's the thing. I mean that talk, my talk has been on there for quite some time. Yeah, I mean, what do you think that it was about your talk, other than the fact that all us little people are out there, wasting time and networking without a proper value-added orientation, so it relates to all of us. But what was it about the way that you delivered it that was succinct enough and powerful enough to get that much shares and views?
You flatter me. I don't know if it was specifically the talk that got the views, but I appreciate the compliment. It was a decent talk. It was only 12 minutes in while I really started to give the value, because I was setting the background and the context and creating the problem. But maybe that's what it was, that I was sharing this common enemy of, we all need to stand out. There's a lot of noise in the world. So maybe that helps. Because I speak and network, I put it in my email signatures. I'm proud of doing a TED Talk. It's a big thing for me, and that never loses its aura, if you like. So if you're proud of it, you want to get it out there. So a bit of self-promotion. a little bit of viral. I think if you have a few sneezers or advocates that will share it about. But you know what? The final thing is 2012 I did that talk, Nathan. So that is quite a long time. And you have that ramp up to get those views. So I'm trying to be humble, but yes, I was awesome.
Well, yes, you were. Yeah. And I mean, humble bragging is sometimes the name of the game on it. And it's impacted a lot of lives. I mean, that's really what it's all about.
Muhammad Ali said it ain't bragging if you've done it.
For sure. Well, here's the cut for time question, Rob. What was the most painful part of your talk that you had to cut out?
I went the opposite way. I had not enough that I wanted to get in. So I had this idea of the red box, and I had 2 or 3 things people could do to stand out. And I could have expanded those, but I contracted those so I could get more in about the story. Because I thought if people can relate to me and the pain that I went through, they'll relate more to the solutions that I'm trying to provide. So 2/3 of my talk was creating the problem. And then a few things about networking and raising your profile and being a little bit different. That was the end of it. So it was the opposite in a way.
Well, that's fascinating because I've heard it said, scientifically that when you are selling, people are twice as motivated to avoid the pain as they are to gain the pleasure. And so I'm hearing a little bit of a good trigger here in the way that you laid it out. You had twice as much pain and reasons why it's not working and reasons why, it's not good for you to not have a plan. And then you provide some tips. And once we're really dialed in, so you establish relevancy and then you give us some actionable tips at the end.
And that's a Steve Jobs thing that I learned. He would create a common enemy. You know that. He'd set up an enemy against Apple or an enemy against technology, and he'd position Apple and the iPod and everything against that enemy. And so everyone was on his side, and he created evangelists. So I was thinking along those lines that if I can say, look, there's a lot of noise out there, it's your enemy. It's a fight for attention, how you're going to stand out. People would really realize, crap, yeah, you're right, that is a problem. And I wanted a lot of Me Too moments. Have you ever been in this position, or I did this and made this mistake and I've got this problem? So that people in the audience would say, wow, that's me. Once you can get them to say that's me, they'll relate.
Rob, what was the most unexpected, strange, or just plain weird thing that happened during or right before your talk?
Well, that's a great one. I'd seen TED Talks on video on YouTube, and I had this idea of this fantastic, great big stage, thousands of people there, raised seating, loads of cameras. So when I walked in, that's what I was expecting. But this was a university. They'd got about 6 students showed up for this, and nobody's there. And I'm thinking, am I in the right room? I see the big TEDx thing going on there. But so I was humbled before I went on. So I really had to get my ego in check and think, whether there's 5 people or 5,000 people, you've got to deliver the same talk with the same passion, and you've got to hit the mark. So people won't see that, but I would have loved a bigger crowd, because you get more energy, don't you, when there's a big crowd?
We've been enjoying very candid conversation and blitz round with our friend Rob Brown, his recent TEDx Nottingham talk, actually from 2012. I'll call that still recent, but the personal brand of you. And I want to let you know where you can go to watch that talk, and go to our show notes page at bethetalk.com. And we'll also have a link to Rob's Academy. It's called the Business Development Academy, and that is at bdacademy.pro. Academy.pro. And we're going to come back in just a moment with Rob Brown and his final word of advice. And we're back with Rob Brown. What's your final word of advice? What's your final word of advice for Talk Universe?
I would say to people, you don't have to be radically different to stand out. There were hamburgers before McDonald's. Just take an idea or a concept and make it 10% different, and that's enough to stand out. More than that, you're too radical and you'll be rejected. So just a little tweak is all you need.
Rob Brown, thanks so much for coming on the talk today and sharing your wisdom with Talk Universe.
Nathan, the pleasure's been almost all yours.
All right, that's a wrap. Okay, Facebook Live, how are we doing? We got some viewers. I am looking for any. I've got Windows on top of Windows.
Oh, this everything down for you.
Overlays.
I've got nothing going on.
Yeah, I've got like
nothing but you.
Overlays, Windows, this crazy software that I have. Comments and reactions. There we go. Okay. Hey, everybody, if you have any questions, comments for Rob, I'm sure he'll be looking at this page. So after we go off, you can put those comments, questions in there. Thanks so much for watching. And for Rob's fan club, this is your chance to share this thing on Facebook Live. Get this thing spreading. I always repurpose it on LinkedIn as well. Hey, LinkedIn clients and BD Academy members, you might just want to spread this on LinkedIn as well. Take care, everybody.